So here's what this session is going to look like. It is 2 hours, which is long, but don't worry, there will be a break in the middle, so you can stretch your legs or grab some tea. But there's two basic elements to this. I'm going to present for 10 to 15 minutes. Then we're going to turn you loose to actually do a bunch of interactive stuff. So you're going to start, you're going to get a digital workbook. You're going to have some time to spend in there alone, reflecting on some challenges and some exercises. Then we're going to put you into small groups and breakout rooms to share with each other what you reflected on in your solo time. Then we'll bring the whole group back together and we'll do a big group communal learning to see what was the same, what was different. Then there will be a break, and then we'll do the same thing again in the second half. So the first half is all about what is an employee sustainability community? And I'm going to draw from my experience at Microsoft to show you what a good example looks like. And then in the second half, it's going to be all about the how, the principles of community organizing, how to actually get organized with your people so that you can drive change where you work. And the hope is that you're going to have this digital workbook that you'll be able to take with you long after the call and use it as you go back into your companies and start to organize with your colleagues. So last time we did this, there were some people who were not able to access the workbook because of mostly corporate permissions on their computers. So now is also a good time to grab pen and paper just in case if you are on a work machine. It's just a Google slide deck that everyone should be able to access. So we'll worry about that when we get to it. Okay, so let's do a vibe check. I run my sessions pretty differently from most people, and I'm happy to say that that's worked pretty well so far. But I do want to kind of like level set the expectations because maybe this isn't for you. And 2 hours is a long time to wait to find out. So let's get it out of the way up front. So number one, this session is interactive. We talked about that a bit in the previous slide, but you're going to be doing stuff. You're not going to just be sitting here listening to me lecture. In fact, I'm going to do that as little as possible. The purpose of doing this is to get your hands dirty, to work, to learn first on your own and then with your fellow participants. So we also learn in a mini experience how to organize with complete strangers, which is a really, how to cooperate with complete strangers, which is actually a critical ingredient for running one of these communities. Number two, anyone can be a leader. Leadership has nothing to do with hierarchy. Leadership is something that you demonstrate every day by showing up, being your authentic self, and helping people become the best versions of themselves. Every single one of you is capable of doing that, and we're going to give you some of the tools to do it here today. All ideas are valid. We're all coming into this at different points in our journey. Some of us are sustainability experts and professionals. Others are what I would call climate curious. Some are seasoned community organizers. Some have never done anything like this before and are really scared. That is okay. All of your ideas are valid. This is a safe space to learn and collaborate and experiment with each other. On that note, we're also supportive. We focus on action. This is all about doing stuff, not just thinking about stuff. And of course, organizing gets the goods. And I'm going to teach you exactly how to do that. Okay, so let's look at the session goals. Number one, we're going to define employee sustainability communities, and I'm going to share good practices from my experience doing this at Microsoft, founding its employee sustainability community. We're going to give you the tools and resources needed to advocate for employee engagement in your organization. This is related to, but a bit distinct from what it means to organize a community. This is how you convince your leaders at your company that all employees deserve the opportunity to work on sustainability. We're going to share practical tips that help you organize a community where you work. And then I'm here to learn from all of you just as much as you're here to learn from me. And so I want to use especially the large group shareouts when we come back from our breakouts to understand common challenges and opportunities. Again, this is collaborative. Community is all about working in the open. And then finally, I hope we're going to make some new friends. We're going to learn in the open and we're going to have fun. So Lucy and Laura have already introduced themselves. They spoiled the slide that I spent so long designing for them. Do you guys want to say anything else about who you are while your beautiful faces?
That is a great slide. We might even steal that one for future webinars. Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome. So yeah, they're here working with all of us. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that, but I'm excited that you're here. All right.
If anyone is interested in taking action from inside a company, check out our website and join our community.
Great plug. I'm Drew. Hi, I'm based in Seattle, Washington. This is the traditional land of the Duwamish people. Unfortunately, they do not have federal recognition here in the States, so they lack all of the resources that come with that. So we're going to put a link in the chat here for an organization called Real Rent Do Amish. If you're interested in supporting the tribe, I would sure appreciate it. I always donate proceeds from some of these webinars to helping them. So as you can see, I've had a pretty unusual, colorful journey. I spent most of my 20s in a touring punk band. After that, I was on a boat with an organization called Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, using direct action to stop poaching of marine wildlife. And then for the last 7 years, I was at Microsoft, where I co-founded its first global employee sustainability community and helped grow it to 10,000 people. I've since left the company and started my own consulting business focused on all of the stuff that you're going to learn here today. So I'm working with organizations like Work for Climate and Work on Climate. I'm a volunteer for them, trying to kind of get the message out there and also get data so that I can understand what the big picture looks like. So why am I here talking to you? Well, my mission is to make sustainability part of everybody's job. And I'm hopefully going to be able to give you some tools that you can use to actually go make this happen where you work. So before we go any further, I do want to start with definitions, because again, knowing that everybody's coming into this from a different place, and that's totally okay. And also that when it comes to sustainability, I find that we often use words that we don't always have a common understanding or common agreement of what we mean when we say those words. So I'm going to level set to make sure that at least for the 2 hours that I have you captive here, we're going to mean the same thing when we use these words. So the first one is sustainability. And so when I say that word, what I mean is to create and maintain the conditions that allow for humans and nature to coexist for present and future generations. When I talk about employee engagement, what I mean is actions to increase employee participation in a company's environmental sustainability efforts. And when we talk about employee sustainability communities or green teams, we mean a group of employees within a company who are organized around the topic of sustainability. So the community provides structure and support for all employees to get educated, inspired, and activated. So what if I told you, and this is part of a bet that I lost, where I had to put climate memes. This one's arguably not a full climate meme, but into the next slideshow presentation I did. So fair warning, there will also be some climate memes that pop up, but I also love the Matrix and think pop culture is really fun for presentations. So what if I told you that employee sustainability communities could unlock resources and job opportunities? I'm going to show you exactly how we did that at Microsoft. So these are notoriously finicky, so I'm going to play it and then stop it just to make sure you can hear the audio.
Sustainability cuts across everything that we do at Microsoft, from how we run our core operations, develop and deploy our products and services, partner with customers around the world, and how we use our voice on critical policy matters. Everything that we do is by and because of our employees. Empowering our global workforce is at the center of our sustainability strategy.
Since 2018, Microsoft employees have self-organized into a grassroots sustainability community and found creative ways to leverage their experience, skills, and passion to help the company achieve its ambitious sustainability commitments to be carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste by 2030.
It started with a handful of us.
Now, with the help of Connected Communities program,
the Sustainability Connected community has over 6,000 members and 35 chapters across the world.
Our mission is simple: make sustainability part of everybody's job.
Everybody's job.
Everybody's job.
The SEC gives every employee at Microsoft a chance to meaningfully contribute to the sustainable transformation currently underway.
It provides a centralized platform to educate, inspire, and activate our entire workforce.
And using the power of community, it gives everyone the tools and resources needed to create real-world solutions to the world's most pressing environmental challenges.
Most importantly, we are driving a wave of culture change and putting the health and well-being of the planet at the center of everything we do.
The SEC inspired thousands of Microsoft employees to find the unique ways they can make sustainability part of their jobs and personal lives.
All right. Trip down memory lane. And that video is already a couple of years old. But going back in time even further, as all good grassroots things, it started really small. So this was a picture taken actually the first time we ever got together. Long before it was a global community, it was a local community. And so it was a group of employees at Microsoft who wanted to know, what can we do as employees to both push the company to do more for sustainability, but also to create an opportunity for everyday employees to get involved in the company's sustainability efforts. And back in 2018, when we started doing this, the company wasn't doing very much, and there was certainly no way for employees to get involved. And so it took a long time, but over the next, oh, I forgot. Here's one of the memes. I have to let that just marinate for a second. Got it? Cool. Over the oh my God. Over the next 5 years, we grew it a lot. So it went from that first group of people that met up once a month in Seattle to a truly global employee sustainability community with 10,000 members. There's something like 40 chapters around the world, members in more than 100 countries. And then, of course, the whole thing runs on volunteer labor. So there's like 50 volunteers who are kind of at the core of this thing, driving 10 different global programs. Because it's Microsoft, obviously it's on Teams and some of the other Microsoft platforms, but there are these giant open conversation forums. And inside of that is where all the real magic happens, because there are tens of thousands of conversations happening every single year of employees asking how circular economy works. Some people sharing news articles and resources. Some people asking questions that their customers are giving them about how they can reduce their waste or whatever. The community is just this giant open forum. Really, really cool. As you can see here from this screenshot from, this is Microsoft's external facing environmental sustainability report from, I think, 2021. The community is actually part of the company's strategy. So Microsoft made these really big, ambitious sustainability commitments in 2020 to be carbon negative, water positive, and zero waste by 2030. And when they did that, they said, we recognize that we're going to need our employees to do that. All of them, not just the ones who have it in their job title. So we had a really nice example of bottom-up grassroots employee organizing, meeting top-down support in the middle, so that we were all pushing together in the same direction to really try to change the culture, like you saw in that video. And then one final note, this will be more relevant when we come back in the second half and talk about the how of community organizing, but it is not an employee resource group. So we'll get into the difference between different types of communities. It is a community of practice, if any of you are familiar with that. Okay, so how does it work? You got 10,000 people, they're all over the world, they're talking to each other, they're running calls, that's cool. How does it actually work? Well, like I said, there is one global community. So no matter where you live, if you work at Microsoft, there's just one community that you join. It is predominantly virtual because of the hybrid work environment. But again, there is a local chapter model. So they operate kind of like franchises, because sustainability looks different in Singapore than in Seattle. So it's all under one umbrella, but it's a global to local sort of format. There are two ways for the community members to actually participate in all the stuff that the community does, those global programs that I mentioned, synchronously and asynchronously. So synchronously, it's things a lot like this. It's webinars, it's calls, it's meetings. There are unstructured open office hours calls with experts. There's all kinds of moment in time things that are happening. But then, of course, as I mentioned before, there's the always on discussion forums. There's an always on hackathon platform. There are ways for people to participate with whatever the community is doing whenever they have time. So every call gets recorded and posted, and there's a transcript and all of that good stuff. And the community has 3 layers of resourcing. So the first one are those volunteers that I mentioned. They are the lifeblood of the community. They are what drive it. The community has been around for about 5 years, so it's now got a pretty good machine running where it can constantly recruit volunteers because people come and go. The next layer of resourcing is executive sponsorship from the Chief Sustainability Officer. As I said, the company largely supports the community and its initiatives, and that sponsorship actually adds legitimacy for everyday employees to participate in it. And then finally, the community is part of a much larger communities of practice program. There's almost 100 of these things on all kinds of different topics, but they're giant open knowledge sharing communities. And that's the job that I had for the last couple of years. I was at Microsoft, was actually managing that program. Okay, Now, I want to show you a couple of examples of things that actually came from the Microsoft employee community and have left the four walls of the company and gone out into the real world and are actually doing stuff. Because what I hear constantly from people about the green teams that they have at work is like, maybe you organize a volunteer tree planting event once a quarter, or encourage recycling in the offices, or something like that, which is great. All of that stuff is necessary and good. But it represents the floor, not the ceiling, of what's possible when you get thousands of really, really smart people collaborating and using their company's resources to innovate climate solutions. So let me show you a couple of examples. So the first one is carbon-aware computing. If any of you use a Windows device and it runs Windows 11, this is a feature that is baked into the OS. And what it does is it senses how much renewable energy is on the grid at any given moment and waits to run large, heavy compute workloads until there's a lot of renewable energy on the grid. Microsoft also uses this technology at hyperscale in its data centers. It started as an employee hackathon project in the Hack for Sustainability Challenge. And a couple of volunteers built a proof of concept, and now it's, well, literally part of the operating system. The Surface Emissions Estimator. Microsoft has a line of hardware, laptops, and tablets and computers called Surface. There was a single employee from Sweden who said, I want to be able to tell my customers the entire life cycle analysis, the entire environmental footprint of this laptop that they buy from cradle to grave. And it took him a couple of years and a couple of hackathons, but he actually built that tool all by himself, and now it's picked up by Microsoft, and it's something you can actually go look at and find online. You can calculate the entire life cycle of your device. The Sustainable Disposition of Customer IT Assets Guide. God, that one is a mouthful. So Microsoft makes a lot of money by convincing other companies to leave their on-premises IT and join the cloud, use Microsoft's. What happens to all of those servers and racks and hardware and data centers and cables and batteries? They get left behind. Another community member said, we've got to create a guide for our customers to teach them how to responsibly recycle this material. And they did just that, using the community to find other people who had the answers they needed. The Green Software Foundation. This is one of my favorite examples on here. If anyone in the audience is an engineer, this is an international nonprofit full of practitioners and academics that are actually teaching software engineers how to code for sustainability, how to optimize for the environment at a literal code level. Another thing that started by a couple of Microsoft employees and then left the company to become what it is today. Similarly, designers at Microsoft said, what's the environmental impact of all of this stuff that we create, all of this digital stuff? How would we actually design for sustainability? What would green design principles look like? And so you might actually notice that my slides look a little strange compared to a lot of ones you see. That's because I'm using a low carbon PowerPoint deck. So it uses dark mode. I use low resolution vector images instead of high resolution pictures. And look, I mean, is it going to save the world? No. But is it a tangible example of what happens when you get people who don't work in sustainability, in this case, designers, looking at the intersection of what they know how to do with sustainability and coming up with a solution? I think so. Employees in the community also advocated for training. How can you expect us to be able to participate in your sustainability strategy if you don't train us on it? It took a couple of years, but eventually the company did create a sustainability training that any employee can take. Haven't been at the company for a year, but last time I checked, I think something like 15,000 people had taken it. This one I'm particularly proud of because it was my hackathon project that I ran for a couple of years. Hopefully you're all familiar with the Ocean Cleanup. They're a small nonprofit out of the Netherlands with a really ambitious mission to clean plastic out of the world's ocean. We ran a couple of hackathons and built some machine learning models and custom camera hardware for them that helps them quantify and classify plastic pollution in river systems. Similarly, another employee hackathon project partnered with an organization called TerraPraxis that is trying to convince coal power plant owners to ditch the coal, leave the infrastructure, and drop small modular nuclear reactors inside those power plants instead. This one project has the potential to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 40% and is now a strategic partnership with Microsoft. And finally, the thing that I'm personally the most proud of, because it took many, many years and a lot of hard work and activism from many people, but Microsoft does a lot of business with the oil and gas industry. Employees consistently pointed out how hypocritical this was to its own stated climate goals, and the company responded with a set of oil and gas principles that actually put limits and restraints on the kinds of work that the company will do with the industry. This is just a snapshot. I mean, I don't even know how to build a slide to show how many other cool things happened, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what is possible when you organize with your colleagues in these green teams and sustainability communities. And look, I understand most companies aren't Microsoft. Not everybody has all the toys and the tech and the money and all of that. And like, that's, yeah, totally understandable. But still, when you build it, they will come. And these employee green teams are the fastest way to activate people on sustainability at scale. If I could sum it all up in one sentence, though, what the community did most successfully was change the paradigm of who got to work on sustainability. You saw the mission earlier, it's make sustainability part of everybody's job. Before the community existed, the only people who were allowed to work on sustainability were the 5 to 10 people in the company that had it in their job titles. The community democratized sustainability work and took it from a single operational thing that one team does and started it down the process of becoming a cultural value that every person in the company feels responsible for and empowered to contribute to. Now I get to stop talking and you get to have some fun. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to give you, you're going to get a link to a digital workbook. If you could drop that in the chat for me, Lena. This is the Google slide deck that I was talking about. Let me change the screen share so I can show you what it looks like. Okay, do you guys have the link yet?
Not yet, sorry, just a moment.
No worries. Okay, while it's coming, I'll explain to you how this works. So this is your workbook. You get to keep it. You get to use it long after the session. We're going to go through 2 exercises in this first part. The first one is a landscape analysis. The second one is a power mapping exercise. Yeah, you can see the screen, right? Okay, thanks. So first thing you need to do is get your own copy of this. Please don't try to edit this one. You can either download a local copy or you can make a copy in Google Slides. Both of those options are up here in the file section. If you can't access, this is where you'll need to use that pen and paper. So for the first exercise, this is your landscape analysis. This is to help you understand what already exists in your current workplace. So does your company have sustainability commitments? Does it have a green team? Does it have a strategy? This will help you kind of go do some homework and research and figure out what's already happening. The second exercise is what's called a power mapping exercise. So you're going to think of a goal. What do you want to accomplish? Maybe it's get more support for my green team, or maybe it's make sustainability part of my job, or maybe it's convince the CSO to stop working with fossil fuel companies. Whatever it is, you'll come in here, you'll write your goal, and then there's 4 boxes here. You can make more if you need. This is all about the who, because successfully doing this requires influencing, often without authority. So you need to identify who are you going to need to influence to make these changes happen. And then you can drag them onto the part of the slide that makes sense of where they should be. Are they going to be an ally? Are they going to be in opposition to you? How much influence do you need to exert on them? Is it like a lot? Is it a little? So you can kind of drag that around. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions about this before we just give you some time to work through it.
Welcome back, everyone, to part 2 of Drew Wilkinson's workshop on how to make sustainability, how to get climate famous. Yes, you didn't know, we've taken a turn. Here we go. I hope you all had an excellent comfort break, saw the sunshine or the moonlight, or just went for a little walk. Drew, kick off part 2.
Great. See the slides? All right. Let's talk about effective workplace community organizing, because you're going to need to know how to do it. But first, a meme. This one I made, actually, so I would like some credit. Can you let me know if you like it? Lucy, thank you. Thank you. Any Lord of the Rings fans? Okay, well. Okay, let's talk about types of communities, because you want the right tool for the job. You might be reaching for a hammer when you need a screwdriver. There are three main kinds of communities that you are likely to encounter in the work environment. The first are employee resource groups. Now, these are, generally speaking, there are no textbook definitions. Trust me, I've looked. These are generally about connecting people. They're affinity groups for diversity and inclusion and the protection of marginalized identities. They're generally pretty simple in terms of structure, often unmanaged with sort of ad hoc collaboration. Now, what I see in a lot of companies is people trying to make green teams inside ERGs. That isn't really the right tool for the job, which you'll see as we get a little bit deeper into community of practice. But look, if that's all your company has, sometimes it's better to just use the existing structure. But sustainability is not a marginalized identity that we need to protect. It is a discipline, which is why community of practice is the right tool for the job if you can build one. So in between those, though, is a community of interest. So this is really just, it could be about anything. It could be cat lovers of Microsoft or Christmas cactus lovers of Salesforce or whatever. These are just unmanaged ad hoc collaboration, random communities. But a community of practice is a very, very different thing. This is a managed community. People are actively curating it, managing it, doing stuff with it. It has goals, programs, and most importantly, it has regular and formalized collaboration, because communities of practice are knowledge sharing communities. And the real secret sauce to having a successful green team is knowledge. It's about educating people about sustainability so they can get up to a baseline and then go do all of that really cool stuff, like start the Green Software Foundation or mess with fossil fuel company contracts. So communities of practice are typically a lot more advanced. They might have a sub-community structure, kind of like the local chapter model that I mentioned Microsoft had. And oftentimes they have formalized programs that actually capture the knowledge that the community creates and then redispense it back out to the community. So this could take the form of like a resource library or a frequently asked questions list, so that the community is actually creating resources that service its own needs. So look, this is not something that you just get to on day one. It's better to think of this as like a sort of maturity curve. You're probably going to need to start with something that is simple, whatever you want to call it. The form will be simple, but community of practice is what you should be aiming for. You're using the community to connect people in your organization across time zones, across geographies, across business groups, across disciplines around the common topic of sustainability. And then you're using a peer-to-peer open learning environment to educate people at scale and get them excited about sustainability. So what you want to do when you build your community is create resources and programming and like the stuff, whatever it is that you ultimately decide to do. You want to move employees through what I call the virtuous cycle of employee engagement. Now remember, employee engagement is actions to increase employee participation in a company's sustainability efforts. Now, people are going to come into this cycle at many different points. Some have never read anything about climate change. Some are going to be experts. So they might come in at a different place. But you do want to make sure that your community is providing some kind of baseline sustainability training, climate literacy, education. You need to make sure that your members understand, first of all, why does your community exist? You should have a mission statement that should be front and center and clear. If people can't see what your community is supposed to do in about 15 seconds, you might have lost them forever. Then you want to provide a baseline of climate literacy. What is climate change? What is happening? What are the causes? What are the solutions? The next layer up, what is the company doing about climate change? What are our sustainability commitment strategies? The community can become an educational platform that helps bring people from climate curious to I've got enough information to get started. From there, you can start moving to inspiration. So when employees do something really cool, share it back with the community. Somebody came up with a new innovation, share it. Somebody did a tree planting event, share it. Whatever the point, you have to give people visible examples of how their peers and colleagues are making sustainability part of their job to help the light bulbs go off at scale. And then, of course, your community needs to find ways to activate people. It's not enough to just be educated and inspired. You have to do something with all of that. So this is where those hackathons can come in, but there's a lot of different ways to activate people. But the overall goal of your community should be creating flywheels, processes that move employees or community members in this case through all three phases of this. And again, you're going to have to build this over time, probably with volunteer labor. You won't have it all on day one. But thankfully, there is there are just an unbelievable amount of free resources out there where you can literally just link people to like YouTube videos or whatever. Like you don't have to create the content yourself, but you do have to curate paths for people to help them find their way through the wilderness. So let's talk about community work because it's pretty different, right? The way most of us were trained in our jobs is I become an expert in the thing I'm really good at, and then I zealously guard and protect that knowledge. That's mine. You can't have that knowledge. That makes me special and unique and employable. Community work is pretty much the opposite. You want to work out loud, and Lucy's favorite thing, you want to overshare. When you have an open forum like a community, like it's a Teams or Slack or whatever, it might be tempting to like slide into those DMs and be like, hey, I saw that you're interested in this or working on that. But then the community misses the benefit of the exchange. Question, answer, debate, counterpoint, whatever it is. Train yourself to work out loud. Show people what you're doing, how you're doing it. Community work is very, very different from the ways that we have mostly been trained to work in our careers. It's also about experimenting and failing fast. Look, every company has a different culture. Some are startups and they're very used to this concept. Some are dinosaurs and they wouldn't know what innovation looked like if you were trying to give it to them for free. So you need to treat your community like a small startup and be experimental. You got to try whatever it's going to take to activate your employees, your colleagues at scale. And that's going to look different for every single one of you. When it comes to communities, less is more. So it's tempting, especially in the beginning, to over-engineer all the stuff that your community is going to need. And what I mostly see is companies where there are multiple sustainability communities. Maybe there's different chapters or whatever, but they're physically different communities that don't talk to each other or aren't connected or have separate memberships. The goal is to have the fewest amount of places possible that employees have to look to find out what is the community? Why does it exist? How do I join? What does it do? How can I do what it does? So start simple. Just build a single website for your community, have a single communication platform, whether that's email or Slack or whatever. Start with less. In the beginning, it's important to focus on asynchronous resources that are on demand. You will want to eventually start doing things like this: live calls, monthly newsletters, live events that bring your community together and create that face-to-face connection. But in the beginning, asynchronous stuff is going to be better. So you can link out to LinkedIn learnings on sustainability. You can curate learning paths. You can record videos, whatever it is. The on-demand stuff is going to help draw people in, because when you do exclusively moment in time events and calls, you are always going to be excluding people across time zones and at work. As we discussed in the last section, people are busier than ever. So if you only do live calls and I can never attend because the last 2 hours of my Friday is the only time I have for this, then you're missing the boat. Communities are a long game. Patience, persistence, discipline, tenacity, these are the qualities of a community organizer. You will be told stop. You will be told no. You will be begging volunteers to do that one thing they said they would do like 6 months ago. You will feel like you are harassing people. It's all part of the process. Communities take a very long time. They are complex systems that are mostly run by a rotating cast of volunteers. So patience, persistence, and build for the long haul. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. It takes a long time. You're not going to get it. It's not going to just pop up overnight. I wish that was true. So have those qualities, patience in particular. And then when it comes to volunteers, because volunteer management is an entire subdiscipline of community organizing that we don't have time to get into, use the buddy system. Anytime you use a volunteer for a function in your community, writing the newsletter, organizing the calls, whatever, have 2 of them. A single volunteer is a single point of failure. This also gets back to the community culture. Work out loud, work together, work in the open, work with other people, work with strangers. Hey, you look strange, let's work together. So always use the buddy system. How to build an effective community. First thing you need to do, and you started this with your landscape exercise, is see what already exists and leverage it. It's tempting, get off the call, you're really excited, you want to go build a community. That's great. Do not let that fire go out. I'm here to throw gasoline on it for you. Wait, that's not good for the environment. You need to see what already exists before you go start building. Maybe there is an existing green team. Maybe it's dormant and not really doing stuff. Go talk to the people who tried to run it and find out why. Don't reinvent the wheel and don't build multiple things. One community, just one. Make your community purpose clear. I already kind of hit on this point. The first thing you should do this community is formed. Second thing you should do, what is our mission statement? Why do we exist? If you can't explain that to people in less than 2 sentences, you're missing an opportunity to recruit a lot of interested employees. So the mission at Microsoft's community was make sustainability part of everybody's job. Feel free to use that one. Make it easy to participate. Maybe your company works in Slack and you're like, I want to build our community on Microsoft Teams. Don't do that. Go with the workflow. Go with where people are already at. Use the systems, the processes, like whatever your company is used to using, just start with that. Even if it's not ideal for building a community, make it easy and in the workflow. You can get more sophisticated and try other things later. This is going back to what we talked about earlier on getting that top-down support, getting that executive sponsorship from a chief sustainability officer or equivalent. Align the actions with the company's sustainability goals if you have them. This really, really helps because if the company perceives you as going off, doing something completely unrelated to what they're trying to do, has no idea what their goals even are, they're not going to take you seriously and they're not going to give you resources to make fancy videos that you can show in webinars a couple of years from now when you're all famous community organizers. So you need to be aligning the actions with the company's sustainability goals in the beginning to get that buy-in and legitimacy and the resources. Get executive sponsorship. I already said this. I already said this too. You're going to need resources, but you're going to have to get a critical mass of employees organized under the banner of your community before you can get to that point. It's very easy to say no to one person. It's also very easy to say no to 10 people. It's a lot harder to say no to 1,000 people or 10,000 people. So this is for a little bit later on, but as you start to collect testimonials from your community members, from your volunteers, this community is my favorite part of my job. This community changed my life. This community built my career. That will help you make the business case for resources. Okay, this is new content. I always demo something new when I do a workshop like this. So a lot of people have asked me like, how? But like, how do you build a community? And there isn't, unfortunately, a one-size-fits-all answer. But this is a new metaphor that I'm playing with. I was stuck in traffic a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking about how frustrating it was to be on a road, on a bridge, looking at the city and like getting lost and all this stuff. And I was like, you know what? This is not that different from what it actually takes to effectively build a community. Because if you build it right and you build it for the long haul, essentially what you're doing is building a city. You are creating, in your case, the digital infrastructure that's required for people to orient themselves inside your community, to make sure that resources, information, things flow in the right direction. So you want arterial streets. You want street signs so that people can orient themselves. I'm going in this way, or I want to go that way. So you can tell me if this lands, because like I said, I'm demoing it right now, but like building a community effectively inside your company is very much like master planning for a city. You want to build for growth because if you do it right, your community is going to get really big, but you also want to make sure that you're creating systems and processes so that stuff can flow. Who's that person that we wanted to ask about that thing? Or where's that resource that got buried in that email inbox? Like, think of it like you're building a city, a sim city in this case. Okay. There are 3 ingredients for community management: people, process, and technology. So people is all about the roles and responsibilities of the various people that you're going to need to run the community. You might have community leads, you might have subject matter experts, however you call them, whatever their function is, you got to have people. And as we saw from your landscape or your power mapping exercise, there are people outside the community that you're also going to need whose support to actually do this. Process. This outlines the things the community will do to provide a consistent experience for members, which also creates structural efficiencies for current and future volunteers. So the consistent experience for members is honestly like the most important thing for building a community. You want your members to know what's coming. Oh yeah, the last Thursday of every month is when we have that call. The next Tuesday is when the newsletter comes. A consistent experience is what draws people in when they're very busy and they don't have time to do this over here and do that over there. So the processes that your community builds will create gains of efficiency for you to do that as you build these flywheels. And then finally, the technology. This is the easiest of the 3. This defines the physical and digital tools that the community is going to need to communicate, organize, host events, create and share and store important resources. Okay, just taking a look at the clock. We're doing good. So We're going to look at a bunch of questions. You don't have to answer any of these right now. And then after this, you're going to go back into your workbooks and you're going to see the exact same questions. But this is to get your wheels turning. Maybe you have some answers for this today. Maybe you have none. Maybe you have them all. But the closer you get to being able to answer all of these questions, the more effectively you will be managing your community. So on the people side, things you want to ask yourself and the people you're building with, of course, because you're not going to be doing it alone. What are the roles of volunteers versus paid employees? What about members versus, volunteers and leaders? Who can join the community? I mean, this is a simple one, but like, is it open to all employees? You also need to define this so you have a consistent member experience. Who is responsible for it? Is it just us climate activists and do-gooders? Is it somebody's day job to manage it? You need to know who ultimately has responsibility for it. What role does executive sponsorship play? Hopefully a big one once you get up to that point where you've sat down with your chief sustainability officer and said, we want to help, make us part of that. And then if you have sub-communities or local chapters, how are they included in the larger thing? So you need to start thinking through how you're going to kind of form the people part. For process, how are those volunteer leaders? Because you don't want to do it alone. And people generally, when they're volunteers, they're not going to do it forever. How do you find the new ones? How do you select them? How do you onboard them? How long do they stay? What happens when they go? What are the defined rhythms of business for the community? This goes back to that consistent experience. What is the stuff that your community does? At a minimum, it just provides a place where people can come to drink from the sustainability water cooler, to talk about this topic. But on a much more advanced level, you're proactively doing things that educate, inspire, and activate them, running programs. So define those rhythms of business as part of your process. What is the user journey from community discovery to active participation? If somebody's never heard of you and they're just browsing the internet or the intranet inside your company, what happens when they find you? What's the first thing they see? How do you pull them in? What's your funnel? And then how does the community document its processes and resources as it grows in sophistication? And then finally, for the technology, you have to decide what digital platforms you're going to use to organize the community. Microsoft, we're using all Microsoft products. That's a no-brainer. It might look different in your company, but you should agree on this stuff before you start building. What physical platforms are going to be used to organize the community and its resources? If you do anything in the real world, in real life, you'll want to think about where you're going to meet, when, what's inclusive. How will community members communicate with each other? How will live events be used? What about asynchronous things like chat forums? What about where the resource is going to be stored? You get the picture. So now we're going back into the workbooks. And let me see if I can get this on the screen. Can you see it? Is it workbook or is it still the slide?
Workbook? It's a workbook. I've also popped the link again in the chat for anyone that needs that link. And we're working on slides 7 to 8.
Yep. So go to slide 7 in your local copy. Remember, you're not editing this one. This will look familiar. I literally just talked it at you for 3 minutes. Slide 8 is your opportunity to start answering those questions as best you can. And we'll give you 9 minutes for this one.